The day Marcus Webb told his daughter that a scrapyard was just a place where broken things went to become something new, he didn't know a woman in a white blazer was close enough to hear every word. She had been standing near the loading dock of Brenner Logistics on the east side of Norfolk, clipboard in hand, sunglasses pushed up on her head despite the overcast sky. Her name was Vivian Ashby, and she ran mid-Atlantic procurement for a defense contractor called Crestline Group. She was 38 years old, had closed 11-figure contracts in 4 different time zones, and had never once second-guessed the way she read a room. She read that room wrong. The man crouching beside the little girl was Hollis Dray. He was 42, wore a gray Henley with a grease stain near the collar, and his work boots had seen better decades. He owned a salvage operation 3 miles east of the port, Dray Marine Recovery, a small outfit that pulled derelict vessels, stripped usable parts, and recycled what was left. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't supposed to be. His daughter's name was Bea, and she was 6, and she had asked about the scrapyard because a boy at school had said her daddy's job was gross. It's where we find what other people gave up on, Hollis told her, brushing a loose curl from her forehead. Sometimes broken things are the most valuable things in the whole place. You just have to know how to look. Bea considered this with the gravity only 6-year-olds can summon. Like when you fixed my music box. Exactly like that, Peanut. Vivienne had not meant to eavesdrop. She had come to Brenner Logistics to finalize a vendor renewal, and the parking situation had pushed her past a side entrance near the dock. She caught the tail end of the exchange, the word scrapyard. The little girl's voice, the man's quiet patience, and she made an assumption so fast she didn't even notice herself making it. She noticed the grease stain. She noticed the boots. She noticed the truck parked crooked near the loading bay with the faded Dray Marine Recovery logo on the side. She did not notice the Navy Cross bumper sticker, which was small and sun-bleached and half hidden by a parking permit. Her meeting with the Brenner operations manager, a compact man named Forsyth, ran long. By the time she walked back through the lobby, Hollis was there. Sitting in one of the waiting chairs with Bea on his knee, reading from a laminated instruction sheet someone had left on the side table, making it funny somehow the way he read it, giving the industrial safety guidelines character voices. Forsyth clocked Hollis from across the room and gave a small wave. "Dreyer about the hull contract?" "Just dropping. Paperwork." Hollis stood, steadied Bea on her feet, passed a folder across the reception desk. Bea had a half day. Vivienne was already moving toward the exit when she stopped. She wasn't sure why she stopped. Something about the ease with which the operations manager spoke to this man, not at him but with him, snagged her attention. "Your operation runs out of the East Yard?" she asked. It wasn't unfriendly. It also wasn't kind. It had the flat efficiency of someone categorizing a vendor. Hollis looked at her. "That's right. Dray Marine. I saw the truck." She tilted her head slightly. "You handle salvage recovery? Salvage, towing, wreck clearance? Some contracted demolition." She nodded in a way that didn't invite further response. Then she looked at Bea, back at Hollis, and said, not cruelly but with a particular kind of thoughtlessness that people with power sometimes mistake for directness, "You should get her a jacket. It's cold out there for a yard kid." Hollis was quiet for a beat. Bea looked up at her father. Hollis said, "She has a jacket. It's in the truck." Vivienne had already turned toward the door. She didn't think about it again for 3 days. The Crestline Group's fall vendor review happened every October, and this year it was being held at the Chesapeake Conference Facility offshore Drive. Vivienne had spent the better part of 2 weeks building the agenda. 12 vendors, 2 days, 4 concurrent sessions. She had done this 8 times. She could run it in her sleep. What she hadn't planned for was Admiral Declan Forsyth. Not the Forsyth from Brenner Logistics, a different Forsyth entirely, retired 4-star Navy, now sitting on Crestline's advisory board, arriving early. He arrived with 2 aides and the quiet certainty of a man who had spent 30 years walking into rooms and having them reconfigure around him. He shook hands down the length of the conference table, unhurried, and when he reached the seat beside Vivienne and took it, she felt the particular pressure of to appear casual near someone who could read deception at depth. "Good agenda," he said, glancing at the printed schedule. "You run procurement?" "Mid-Atlantic, yes." "Vivian Ashby." He nodded. Then he looked toward the door. Hollis Dray walked in. He was wearing a collared shirt this time, dark blue, no stain at the collar. He carried a leather portfolio she hadn't seen before. He walked differently here. Not stiff, not performed, just contained in a way she hadn't registered when he was crouching beside his daughter in a logistics dock. He had been invited. She hadn't known that. Dre Marine Recovery had been added to the vendor shortlist 2 weeks ago by someone above her chain, flagged as a specialized recovery asset with DoD-adjacent clearance. She'd seen the paperwork, she hadn't connected the name, she was connecting it now. Hollis scanned the room. His eyes moved the way people's eyes move when they are used to scanning for something specific in a space. Threat assessment, she thought, and then filed that observation away. His gaze landed on Admiral Forsyth. Something shifted in his face. Not surprise exactly. Recognition. Forsyth was already rising. Dre. His voice had warmth in it, not the professional warmth of a business greeting, but the particular warmth of someone speaking a name they haven't said aloud in a long time. It's been years, Captain. The room did not go silent the way rooms do in movies. Conversations kept moving at adjacent tables. But something changed in the air near Vivian's end of the table. The three people closest to her all seemed to register the same moment without acknowledging it. Hollis crossed the room and shook the Admiral's hand. It was a real handshake, the kind that carries history. 11 years, Hollis said. How's the operation? Growing, slower than I'd like, but growing. Forsyth smiled. You were always patient. He said it the way you say something that means more than its words. Vivienne was watching. She had been watching since Hollis walked in. She was aware, distantly and uncomfortably, that the category into which she had placed him 3 days ago was not the right category. She thought about what she had said. It's cold out there for a yard kid. She thought about Bea looking up at her father's face to see how he would respond. She thought about how he had responded. She has a jacket, it's in the truck. Quiet, no performance, no wound visible. The meeting began. Hollis presented third in the rotation. He spoke without notes for most of it, knew his numbers, knew his capacity, knew the specific technical requirements of the 3 recovery contracts under discussion in a way that made it clear he hadn't learned the specs last week. He answered questions directly and without ornamentation. When someone pushed back on timeline estimates, he didn't negotiate downward to please the room. He said, I won't quote you a timeline I can't hold, that one I can hold. Forsyth, from the far end of the table, said nothing. He didn't need to. Vivian said nothing either. When her turn came to respond to his presentation, she asked 2 technical questions, both fair, neither designed to provoke. He answered them cleanly. At the break, she caught him near the coffee station. She had been turning over what to say for 40 minutes, and she had not arrived at anything elegant, so she said the plain thing. I said something careless the other day. At Brenner, he looked at her. He had a quality of stillness that she found difficult to read, not guarded, not cold, just very settled. Like a man who had decided a long time ago that other people's carelessness was not his emergency. I remember, he said. Your daughter was right there. She was. I called her a yard kid. Hollis poured his coffee. He didn't do her the favor of filling the silence. I'm sorry, Vivienne said. That was thoughtless. He considered this for a moment, not long, just long enough to make it clear that he was actually considering it, not just waiting for her to finish. She is a yard kid, he said. She loves it there. She helps me sort cable spools. A pause. But that's not what you meant. No, Vivienne said. It wasn't. Then I appreciate the apology. He picked up his coffee and moved back toward the conference table, and Vivienne stood there for a moment with her own cup, aware of something rearranging itself quietly in her chest. She found out the rest of it in pieces, the way you find out things you should have looked for earlier. She learned it from Forsyth first, not because she asked, but because she was standing near him during the afternoon break when one of the aides asked about the recovery contract shortlist, and Forsyth mentioned Dre by name with a specificity that made her pay attention. He ran maritime recovery operations in the Gulf during 2 deployments, Forsyth said, without particular drama, the way you state a fact. Built the clearance protocol that's still standard for shallow water IED debris in 3 combat theaters. He was the best I had in that role. Hands down. The aide nodded and moved on. Vivienne did not move on. She learned the rest later, not from anyone at the conference, but from public records, the kind of records that don't announce themselves but don't hide either if you think to look. Hollis Dre had served 18 years in the Navy. He'd been a lieutenant commander before he separated. The reason for his separation was medical, a spinal injury sustained during a recovery operation off the coast of Bahrain. Not career-ending by the Navy's initial assessment, but he'd declined a desk role. He'd come home to Virginia, used his severance and his savings and a small business loan, and built Dre Marine Recovery from 2 boats and a rental yard into a 12-person operation with 2 tugboats and a contract history that included 3 different federal agencies. He had done this while raising Bea alone. Her mother had died when Bea was 14 months old. Ovarian cancer, fast and total. He hadn't slowed down. He had also, by all available evidence, not hardened. The way he spoke to his daughter in that logistics doc, the patience in it, the gentleness, that wasn't something a man performed for an audience. There had been no audience, just a little girl asking why people thought her daddy's job was gross, and a father who answered her with something true. Vivian sat with all of this for a long time. She had built a career on her ability to read situations accurately. She had taken real pride in it. The misread she'd made in that logistics doc was not a small one. It was the particular kind of misread where you don't even know you're misreading, because the conclusion arrives faster than the evidence. She had seen grease on a collar and boots with wear and a salvage yard logo on a truck, and she had assembled a person from those parts. She had been wrong. The second day of the vendor review began at 8. Hollis arrived at 7:45. So did Vivian. They were the only 2 people in the conference room for about 6 minutes. She was going through her notes at the end of the table. He set up his materials at his assigned seat, 2 chairs away. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Bea called. Vivian heard it because the room was quiet, and he answered on speaker for a moment before he caught himself and switched to held. "Daddy, Miss Lorraine says we're doing the Leaf Project today." "That's today. Do you have your bag?" "I forgot it. It's in your cubby, bottom row, left side. I put it there last night." A pause. "How did you know I would forget it?" "Because you always forget it. You always forget things right before you need them, and then you find them exactly where I put them." "That's not true. Name one time." A longer pause. "The thing with the music box. You didn't forget the music box. You broke the music box. Same result." He laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of him. "Go find your bag, Peanut. Be good for Miss Lorraine." He lowered the phone, realized Vivian was in the room. A flicker of something crossed his face. Not embarrassment, just acknowledgement. "She's at school?" Vivian asked. "First grade. Her teacher does a fall leaf project every year. Very elaborate. She talks about it like it's a state dinner." Vivian smiled. It was a real smile. "How long have you been doing this alone?" He didn't answer right away. Not evasively, he just looked at the question and decided how to hold it. 5 years, he said. "Almost 6, that's a long time." "It is." He opened his portfolio, not in a way that ended the conversation, just something to do with his hands. "It gets lighter. Not easier exactly, but lighter." "There's a difference." Vivian thought about her own life for a moment. The efficiency of it, the forward motion, the things she'd set down somewhere along the way and never gone back for. She didn't say any of that out loud. "She seems like a good kid." "She's the best person I know," Hollis said. "Matter of fact, no performance. I'm aware that sounds like something fathers say. I also don't care." The other attendees started filtering in around 7:52. The room filled up with the specific noise of a second conference day, slightly looser, slightly louder, the formality worn down at the edges. Forsyth arrived at 5 to 8 and nodded at Hollis from the door before he'd even cleared the threshold. The morning sessions ran through lunch. In the early afternoon, the shortlist review began. Vivian ran it. She moved through the vendors methodically, presenting summaries, fielding questions from the advisory board, flagging contract terms that needed revision. When she reached Dre Marine Recovery, she presented his numbers accurately and completely. She flagged his prior federal contract history as a particular strength. She noted, once without editorial, that his DoD adjacent clearance gave him access to categories that most of the competing vendors couldn't touch. She did not editorialize. She did not compensate. She just gave him the same full and honest treatment she gave everyone else in that room. Forsyth, from his seat at the advisory end, watched her present. His expression didn't change. But when she finished and moved on, he made a small checkmark on his copy of the agenda, and she saw it. She knew what it meant. It meant she'd handled it right. The contract went to final review 3 weeks later. Dre Marine Recovery was recommended for 2 of the 3 open slots. It was the right call. She was certain of that, had been certain from the moment she finished reviewing the full submission. Hollis's technical qualifications weren't close. The other vendors weren't in the same conversation. The letter went out on a Thursday. She signed it. That afternoon, she was back at Brenner Logistics for an unrelated vendor meeting. The east parking lot again, the same dock, different errand. She was walking back to her car when she heard a small voice say her name. She turned. Bea was sitting on the tailgate of the Dre Marine recovery truck, legs swinging, eating an apple. She was wearing a bright orange jacket. She had apparently learned Vivian's name from somewhere, probably from Hollis, who had gotten it from the conference materials. "Hi, Bea," Vivian said. "Dad said you helped him get a contract. Your dad's work earned the contract." Bea took a bite of her apple and considered this with the same judicial gravity Vivian had clocked at the dock 2 weeks ago. "He's been working really late. That's what getting ready for a new contract looks like. Does it always look like that?" "If it's a good contract, yes." Bea seemed satisfied with this answer. She took another bite. Hollis came around the front of the truck, saw Vivian and stopped. He had the look of a man assembling a new version of a situation. "I sent a note to your office," he said. "Thank you. You don't need to thank me. I submitted accurate information." "Still." She nodded. Then she looked at Bea and back at him. "She told me you've been working late. I always work late." He looked at Bea with something tired and warm in equal measure. "She also always tells people things I haven't specifically asked her to tell them." "It's called being forthcoming," Bea said, without looking up from her apple. Hollis gave Vivian a look that said, "You see what I mean." She gave him one back that said she did. "She's going to be formidable," Vivian said. "She already is," he said. "I'm just trying to keep up." Vivienne got into her car. She sat there for a moment before starting it, watching through the windshield as Hollis lifted Bea down from the tailgate and took her apple core and tossed it in the trash can near the dock entrance, and took her hand and walked her toward the cab of the truck. Bea said something. He bent slightly to hear it. He said something back. She laughed, a loud, unself-conscious, 6-year-old laugh that carried across the parking lot. It occurred to Vivian, sitting in her car with her key in her hand, that she had spent 3 days carrying an apology that she'd been afraid to deliver because she wasn't sure how it would land. She had expected him to be colder. She had expected the distance that people maintain when they've been reduced carelessly by someone they didn't choose to be near. He hadn't maintained that distance. He'd accepted the apology and kept moving. Not because he was soft, but because he was... She searched for the word and found it. Whole. He was whole in a way she hadn't been looking for and therefore hadn't seen. She started the car. She pulled out of the parking lot. She drove east toward Shore Drive with the windows down and the October air coming through cold and clean off the water, and she thought about what he'd told his daughter about broken things. Sometimes broken things are the most valuable things in the whole place. You just have to know how to look. She had not known how to look, not the first time she was starting to. Forsyth called her office the following Monday. "The Dre recommendation," he said. "You want to know what I thought when I saw your summary? I imagine you're going to tell me. I thought she did it right." He paused. "I've seen people in your position do it wrong in both directions. Overcorrect and you're handing out charity. Undercorrect and you're just repeating the original mistake in a different outfit. You gave him exactly what he was owed. No more, no less. That's my job." "It is. Most people use their job as a reason not to think. You thought." She didn't have a response to that, so she didn't manufacture one. "He's good, Ashby," Forsyth said. "He was good when I knew him, and he built something real after. That doesn't happen by accident. That's a specific kind of person." A brief pause. "I thought you should know what you signed your name to." After she hung up, she sat at her desk for a while. She pulled up the contract documentation on her screen, not to check anything, just to see it. Dre Marine Recovery. 2 contracts. Federal clearance confirmed. Operations out of the East Yard, Norfolk, Virginia. She thought about a little girl sorting cable spools on the weekends. She thought about a man who, when someone reduced him in front of his child, had not defended himself with his history or his rank or his record. He had just steadied his daughter and told the truth about what the yard was and what it was worth. She closed the file. Outside her window, the Chesapeake moved gray and wide under an overcast sky. The way it did in October, the way it would keep doing long after every meeting in every conference room had been forgotten. Somewhere east of there, 12 people were going to work at Dre Marine Recovery, and one of them was probably Hollis, and somewhere nearby was a little girl in an orange jacket who thought being forthcoming was a virtue. She was right about that, Vivian thought. She was right about that.